My brother stole my startup idea at dinner, so I let him launch it, waited for investors, then pulled the patent and watched everything crash the night before his big demo. It happened at a quiet Italian place tucked into the side of a city block, the kind of spot where the lighting was soft enough to make secrets feel safe. I hadn't planned to tell him. Not that night. But something about the way he asked how things were going, how he leaned forward with that half-smile we both inherited from our father, made me believe for just a moment that he was still my brother, not a competitor. I told him it was still early, just a framework and a concept, but with the potential to shake up the data transfer market. This changes how devices talk to each other, I explained, tracing invisible lines on the table as I spoke. No servers, no middleman, direct handshake, end to end. Secure, lightning fast. No one's done it right. Not like this. He listened closely, nodding at all the right beats, even asked questions that showed he understood the technical core. I remember the way he lifted his glass and said, to family and to whatever comes next. I didn't know he meant his future, built on my work. 2 weeks later, a friend sent me a link. It was his post on a business platform, complete with a shiny new logo, a flashy pitch video, and a caption that said he'd finally cracked it. I watched the video twice, then a third time, sitting still in my chair as the words I'd spoken over pasta came back to me almost verbatim. The concept, the structure, the very name I used internally on my draft white paper, just tweaked enough to look fresh. He'd even hired a digital artist to model the UI I'd sketched on a napkin. I didn't call him. I didn't send an angry message. I didn't try to meet and talk it out. That part of me, the hopeful part, was already dead. What he didn't know, and what I never once mentioned during dinner, was that I had quietly filed the provisional patent 3 months earlier. I used my own savings to cover the fees, hired a proper patent attorney, and made sure every corner of the system, down to the compression algorithm and UI logic, was included. It was real, legal, sealed. So I let him move. Let him announce a beta. Let him speak at local tech meetups, stand on stages with a wireless mic, and say the phrase revolutionary protocol like he'd spent years thinking it up himself. He courted investors, ones I knew well. I recognized the names in the articles he tagged: former execs, boutique fund managers, a tech podcaster with an eye for early-stage disruption. He gained followers, interviews, promises. The engine of hype ran hot. And I waited. He sent out invitations to a private demo in San Francisco, promising a live demonstration that would redefine real-time device communication. The venue was booked. The stage lighting rehearsed. I knew every step he was taking because I would have taken them too, had it been mine to announce. The night before his big reveal, I wrote one email. It was direct. No emotion. Just a formal notice from my legal team with the subject line, Notice of Infringement on U.S. Patent. Attached were the official filings, the original submission timestamps, and a scanned copy of the final acceptance letter. The message instructed him to halt all use and promotion of the software immediately, or face full legal proceedings. By morning, the effect rippled like a stone dropped in still water. His site went offline. The platform's social media accounts vanished. Every mention of the launch disappeared, leaving a void where excitement had just been. Rumors leaked fast, investors pulling back, NDAs breaking early, whispers of intellectual theft turning into public blacklisting. The demo? Cancelled. The venue? Quiet. He called me 5 times. Left messages. I picked up on the 6th ring. His voice cracked through the line like a man trying to undo a landslide with his bare hands. I didn't know, please, can we talk? I paused for a moment, not out of hesitation, but to let the silence settle. Next time you steal from someone, I said, make sure they don't already own it. Then I hung up. He thought he was launching a future built on a shortcut. What he did instead was ignite a trap that had been quietly waiting since the day I filed the patent. And now, everything he thought he built was ash. The morning after his launch collapsed, my inbox lit up like a server under attack. Some messages came from names I hadn't heard in years, old classmates, former colleagues, ex-partners in startups that never left the garage. Most of them had the same question beneath the politeness. Did you really do it? A few were sharper, asking if I'd sabotaged my own brother for revenge. None of them knew the full story. None of them needed to. What mattered was that the facts stood on paper, legally certified, signed, and dated. Meanwhile, his silence stretched. No posts, no clarifications, no desperate attempts at damage control. He had vanished from the platforms where he'd once paraded his progress. The press that had featured his so-called innovation just weeks before now updated their stories with cautious language, alleged patent infringement, project paused pending legal review, investors withdraw support due to ownership dispute. But it wasn't a dispute. It was theft, documented and proven. My phone rang twice more that day. I didn't answer. He finally stopped trying. I knew where he'd be, though. When you spend years sharing the same roof, you learn someone's fallback routines. He always ran to the same people when things turned sour. Later that week, I got a text from our cousin Mark. Short, blunt. He's at Dad's house. You going to show up or let this boil? I read the message once, then again, and tossed my phone on the couch. I knew it would come to this. He'd try to drag family into it, appeal to nostalgia, try to rebuild sympathy from the ruins. But this wasn't about a disagreement. It wasn't even personal anymore. He crossed a line with full intent, and now he was watching the consequences roll in like a wave he couldn't outrun. But I went. Not for him. Not out of guilt or curiosity. I want to make it clear that the damage wasn't something that could be brushed under a rug with childhood memories and apologies muttered in our father's kitchen. He was already there when I arrived. Sitting at the table. Same spot he used to sit in back when we argued over who'd get the last waffle. But now he looked drained, older somehow, like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. Dad wasn't home. Mark had probably made sure of that. He didn't speak at first. Just stared at the table. Then finally, without looking up, he said, I messed up. I leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, keeping distance. You didn't mess up. You calculated. You saw something real and thought you could take it because you knew I wouldn't scream. His fingers tapped the table, slow and uneven. I didn't think it would get this far. That made me laugh, bitter and short. You announced a global launch. You signed investment contracts. You made partnerships with people who trusted your name. How far did you want it to get? I thought maybe you'd join. After it took off, I didn't move, just stared. That's the part that blows my mind, I said finally. You thought stealing my work and pretending it was yours would somehow become a bridge? You built a tower out of lies and thought I'd want to climb it with you. His face twisted, and I couldn't tell if it was shame or frustration. I wasn't trying to screw you over. You did screw me over, I snapped. You didn't try. You sat across from me while I laid out something I'd worked on for years. You asked the right questions. You acted interested. Then you stole every piece, changed the label, and pitched it like you'd just woken up with the idea in your sleep. He went quiet again. I walked over to the counter and poured a glass of water, more out of habit than thirst. The room was too still. It felt like every sound pressed harder than it should, chair legs creaking, glass clinking, even the slow hum of the fridge had weight. I filed that patent before I even spoke to you, I said. You never had a chance to own it. I made sure of that, because I knew on some level that if anyone was going to snake it, it would be you. That hit him. He leaned back, hands covering his face. You didn't trust me at all? Why should I have? I asked. You've been cutting corners since college, always looking for the shortcut that skips the work but keeps the reward. He didn't deny it. The silence stretched again, and then, without warning, he looked up. You think this ends with a legal document? You think those investors won't move on to someone else? You think the tech world will remember you when the dust clears? I shook my head slowly. No, I don't care if they do. I didn't build this to be famous. I built it because it works. Because the idea matters. Because the right people, real ones, will notice when the noise fades. He stood up then, and for a second I saw that same spark he'd always used to talk his way into things. But it was dimmer now, less certain. You didn't just ruin my launch, he said. You ruined me. No, I said. You did. Then I left. The next few weeks were quiet. Too quiet, honestly. After the demo crash, his social circle thinned like a dying signal. One by one, his supporters dropped off, Not out of spite, but self-preservation. No one wanted to be attached to a collapsing brand, especially one caught in a legal firestorm. A couple of mutual friends reached out cautiously. They asked if I was planning to press further. One even hinted that he might sue me back, try to paint it as a shared project or something born out of joint conversations. I wasn't worried. My documentation was airtight. Every email, every dated revision, every time-stamped sketch and prototype had been preserved and notarized. My attorney, an old contact from an IP firm I'd consulted with before, reviewed the package 3 times and called it over-prepared. That was fine by me. But I didn't plan to drag this through court unless I had to. The damage was done. His name was burned in all the rooms that mattered. The investors who'd once shaken his hand now ignored his calls. His supposed partner companies withdrew quietly, citing internal restructuring and realignment of strategy. We both knew what that meant. What I didn't expect, though, was what came next. A month later, I received an email. Not from him. Not from any lawyer either. It was from someone I hadn't met but had followed for years. A venture builder. Someone with deep reach in the tech world, known for staying behind the scenes while assembling powerful startup teams. He'd seen the fallout, read the patent, and wanted to talk, not about the past, but the product. That meeting led to another, then to a closed-door demo with his technical advisor, followed by a quiet pilot run with a mid-sized logistics company looking for secure peer-to-peer tracking between field devices. The system performed better than I'd promised. No bugs. No lag. The data pipeline held strong across stress tests that would have shattered early beta builds. They asked when I'd be ready to scale. I told them I already was. Within weeks, we inked a licensing deal. Then came another. The second one with a fleet management firm that wanted edge-based communications without cloud dependency. No splashy press. No big public launch. Just steady expansion, fueled by proven results. Word traveled differently this time, not through marketing, but through whispered recommendations from CTOs and project managers tired of overhyped failures. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on my brother, not out of malice, but because it helped me track the reach of the fallout. He'd taken a job at a small consulting firm in another city, mostly quiet work, no spotlight. He kept his name low, avoided social media, tried to rebuild with what little was left. But every time someone Googled him, the story popped up. The stolen pitch, the canceled demo, the legal takedown. He never tried again, never reached out, never apologized. And I didn't need him to, because now the work was moving. The tech was in real systems, helping real users. And all the noise he tried to generate had been replaced by something far more valuable results. I never built the idea for fame, but he tried to steal it for exactly that. And in doing so, he gave me the perfect spotlight to show the world what real innovation looks like when it's not wrapped in lies. 6 months after the crash, the dust had fully settled. The tech world, always hungry for the next big story, had moved on. New startups were trending. New demos were going viral. But my product, the original system he tried to claim, was quietly establishing a presence behind the scenes. The companies that mattered weren't looking for hype. They were looking for something that worked, something that could be trusted. And I had it. I spent those months head down, buried in product refinement, support infrastructure, and real-time data stress testing. The partnerships I'd built weren't glamorous, but they were stable. Licensing brought in steady capital. Developers began integrating the protocol into more systems. Feedback came in from field operators who didn't care about press, but praised its speed, security, and simplicity. It was doing exactly what I designed it to do, solving real problems. I kept everything quiet. No interviews. No press releases. The last thing I wanted was attention I didn't control. My name didn't show up in headlines. There was no social media campaign. I built the foundation silently, deliberately, brick by brick. And it was working. Then one afternoon, a letter came. Not an email. Not a message from a lawyer or investor. A paper envelope, hand-delivered. No return address, just my name, written in handwriting I hadn't seen since high school. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper and a single flash drive. The note was short. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I can't walk away like nothing happened. This is everything I took: code, docs, investor notes, correspondence. Use it, burn it, whatever. Do what I should have done in the first place. R. I turned the flash drive over in my hand, then set it on my desk without plugging it in. I didn't need it. I already had every file, every version. What mattered wasn't what he gave me, it was the fact that he finally admitted what he did. That was the last I heard from him. No more messages. No follow-up apology. No requests. It was his final move, not for reconciliation, but for closure. He didn't ask for anything in return, and I didn't offer any comfort. That door was already closed. I filed the flash drive away and returned to work. By the end of the first year, the system had become a standard for mid-size logistics and secure equipment syncing in distributed networks. 3 major hardware manufacturers entered into exclusive integration agreements. My small team, hand-picked engineers, and 2 old friends from my early startup days handled back-end support and system adaptation. We didn't chase headlines. We didn't appear at conferences. We delivered what others only promised. One afternoon, while reviewing reports from a new client in the autonomous delivery sector, my lead developer turned to me and said, "You know, if this keeps scaling, we'll be in every corner of the market by next year." I nodded. "That's the plan." "Still weird," he added, "how close you came to losing this." I didn't answer, because it hadn't been close. Not really. The patent had done its job. The structure I built held. But what I'd almost lost wasn't the idea. It was my belief that the people closest to you would respect the things you create. What my brother had taken wasn't just a set of files or a concept. It was a piece of trust that couldn't be patched with silence or returned in a flash drive. But that loss didn't break me. It just clarified everything. In the second year, the system expanded overseas. Licensing deals in Europe and Southeast Asia opened up new avenues. The protocol was adapted for edge devices in rural medical networks. A nonprofit used it to sync encrypted health records between remote field units and portable scanners in areas with limited infrastructure. The feedback came in slowly, quietly, but always pointed in one direction. It worked where nothing else had. That was enough for me. I never reached out to my brother again. I heard he moved again. Smaller city, basic job in operations for a logistics firm. No tech ventures. No startup pitches. He kept his head down. That was fine. He could keep the silence. I didn't need his apology to move forward. The moment he hit post on that first pitch months ago, he chose a version of himself that left no room for trust. And I answered not with anger, but with precision. He launched a stolen dream. I buried it with one document. And then I rebuilt it from the ground up under my own name, in my own way, with no shortcuts. No part of this story needed revenge. It just needed consequences. 3 years in, the protocol was acquired. Not bought out in a hostile takeover. Not absorbed in desperation. A deliberate, structured acquisition by a global firm that had been watching since the first licensing deal. Their offer was generous, equity, control over future adaptations, full credit preserved. I signed because it was the right move. It gave the system more reach, more resources, and a bigger footprint than I could have scaled alone. After the papers were signed, one of the executives shook my hand and said, "You built something unshakable. I've seen 100 pitches in this field. Only yours had a core we couldn't crack." I didn't respond with pride, just a nod, because I hadn't built it for attention. I built it to work, and I'd protected it because I knew what it was worth. Not in dollars, in time, in silence, in discipline. Everything my brother never understood. I walked out of that office with the deal done and no unfinished business. Nothing was left to explain. No grudge to carry. No shadow from the past still pulling at my steps.